Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this briefing about the war in Ukraine and the humanitarian impact of the ongoing war in that country, as well as the response from universities. My name is Omar Hernandez. I am Public Information Officer and Program Manager of the United Nations Academic Impact, which is an initiative that aligns institutions of higher education with the goals, principles, and ideas enshrined in the United Nations Charter, and we are housed in the Outreach Division of the UN Department of Global Communications here at UN headquarters in New York. It's a privilege to have with us a representative not only from the UN system, but also from UNEI members who are very actively providing support to those in need from Ukraine, particularly in these challenging times. And with that, I will now give the floor to Robert Skinner, who is the chief of UNEI and also the deputy director of the Outreach Division. Rob, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Omar, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. We know it's certainly a challenging time in the region, and we appreciate you taking the time from the universities in Hungary, Romania, Poland, and the UK to be with us. And more than joining us today, we appreciate all that you're doing to be supportive in this time of crisis. We learned yesterday, and I know that Dana will get into this in more detail, that we reached the 5 million refugee mark as of last night, UNHCR announced. So, the numbers are staggering, really, and we don't really expect that that's going to change. We know that the war continues, the invasion continues, and with devastating consequences within the country, but impacting the region in really significant ways. So the work that all of you are doing on the campuses in the region, makes us proud that you're part of the UN Academic Impact Network, and to see the members of the UNAI stepping up in such a significant way is really critical and crucial and much appreciated. And thank you for sharing your stories as well, which we've been trying to publicize and push out through the Academic Impact Network and and through our partners and colleagues around to demonstrate just how much all of you have stepped up to take on and do all that you can within this challenging time. I'd also like to note, knowing that folks from all over the world are probably joining us, we recognize that this crisis is having a global impact. It's not just in the region, although some of the most visible and striking images are coming directly from the region. But with food prices, the energy crisis, inflation, all of those kinds of impacts are being felt everywhere, particularly in countries that are in many ways the least prepared to manage the crises, and that were already impacted by COVID-19, already struggling with their economies that are being impacted. So I want to make sure that we at the UN recognize that that's happening, and we're thinking about it and looking at it. And the Secretary General has established a task force to consider those impacts, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more on that as we go forward. But today, we're here to hear from all of you, to hear what you're seeing, hearing, and doing in the region around Ukraine and the neighboring countries that are, feeling the impacts with the refugee flows coming your way and other impacts as well. So again, I thank you for joining us, but again, most of all, thank you for all that you're doing. Back to you, Omar.
Thank you, Rob. And we decided to make, before we analyze how the different universities that are part of the UN Academic Impact Network, their actions in the field to support those in need from Ukraine, we wanted to have an overview, an updated and current overview of the situation, particularly on the humanitarian side, from one of our colleagues from the UN system. And for that, we have with us today Dana Sleiman. She worked as communications officer for the United Nations Development Program in Lebanon for 4 years, and then started her work with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in 2011, first in Lebanon as public information officer, and then in New York as senior communications officer until present. Dana, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Omar and Robert, for your remarks. I'm really pleased to be here, and especially to be with all of you from neighboring countries. You're witnessing the crisis firsthand, and I'm sure you're going to bring much more color to the discussion than I am. So Omar, feel free to cut me off if I'm going over time. I'll try to be brief. I figured for for my presentation, I might run a few pictures in the background from our operations on the ground. So let me share my screen, and I'll be speaking as I present. Let me just figure this out. Sorry, 1 second. It should be loading. Okay. Okay, so can you see, can anyone give me a sign that the
Yes.
presentation is up? Okay, perfect. So I will just go over a few basics about thanks for, I'm assuming this is to say that your hands are up to say the presentation is on. Okay, so we're at, as Robert mentioned, we just marked the 5 million refugees who have fled Ukraine. And this is in the span of just 8 weeks. So I wanted to go over numbers first and foremost, and just highlight the sheer scale of this crisis and the speed at which it's unfolding. There are over 7 million people who are displaced inside Ukraine, and the UN estimates that 13 million people are in hard-to-reach areas and in hardest-hit areas where reaching them for humanitarian aid is not necessarily safe or possible. So what do these numbers mean? Oftentimes when we speak about millions, and of course we always do, millions of refugees, millions of people displaced, it's difficult to wrap one's head around how this impacts individuals. So we're talking about women and children and the aged, and people who have left their homes, leaving family members behind for various reasons and considerations. And yesterday, our Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly Clements, was addressing the Security Council from neighboring, because she was in Hungary, in fact, and she was speaking about her visit in Prague, where she had met Lupa, a 25-year-old from Odessa, and like so many others, she was forced to flee and leave behind her family, her father and her mother, and then her grandmother has been out of reach in Melitopol since the beginning of the crisis. And this is just one story, and each and every story of those 5 million, including those who are displaced inside Ukraine, is unique. And what we do, and my job, is to try to zero in on these individuals and tell human stories, tell individual stories, so that the crisis becomes more relatable and more human too. And I know we are joined today by speakers from Hungary, from Romania, from Poland, from the UK, and I have to stop here and say that the remarkable acts of humanity that we're witnessing in neighboring countries, and not just by governments who have, of course, kept their borders open and continue to welcome refugees from Ukraine, but also from the people who have gone above and beyond to try to accommodate refugees from Ukraine. So the compassion we're seeing in neighboring countries continues, and this is not something we take for granted. It's really commendable, and we're seeing local authorities, we're seeing individuals, communities rallying to provide what they can, from accommodation to food to transportation, a place to sleep. And this is really something we take with us, and we try to message for crises across the world where we see a need for more support and more generosity. So this is just a very heartfelt and shout out to these acts of solidarity that do not go unnoticed. And in terms of our response, we've been present in Ukraine for the past 30 years, and we've been running an emergency operation since 2014. We continue to work with the government, but the scale that I just described of this crisis is such that we've had to ramp up our operations at an incredible speed, which has not been easy. And Currently, we're providing life-saving support inside Ukraine, especially in the center and the east, where we're seeing a brutal impact of the humanitarian crisis. We're scaling up cash assistance to about 360,000 vulnerable people inside the country. We're extending shelter support and shelter protection to those whose homes have been damaged and repair reception centers so that they are able to access services in safety and dignity. And we're signing agreements with a number of ministries inside Ukraine so that we can continue with these programs. Now, as you know, wars have a devastating cost, and we see it not just in Ukraine, but in our work at UNHCR, we see it across the world. It's not new, and sadly, it leads to the same harrowing stories of tragedy and loss for those who are forced to flee, whether internally or or those who leave their countries. And the heartbreaking stories they touch those who are able to escape and consider themselves lucky and have survivor's guilt, and also those who are trapped inside, those who are not able to reach. And one thing in terms of the humanitarian impact that I wanted to highlight is the toll on women and children who constitute the vast majority of people who are forced to flee and who are on the move. The risk of gender-based violence, and this is something again that our Deputy High Commissioner yesterday in her address to the Security Council stressed, the risk on women and girls, the risk of gender-based violence is starting to reveal itself. It's always present in wars. Vulnerable people, especially those who are forced to flee, are exposed to these vulnerabilities. And unfortunately, traffickers and others try to exploit this vulnerability and expose these people to abuse and high risk. And so we're starting to get anecdotal information. It's already coming out about persons approaching aid workers and trying to access these services. So we're trying our best to ramp up our gender-based violence programs inside Ukraine and outside Ukraine. We're working with UNICEF on a one-stop shop called Safe Blue Dots, which are safe spaces in reception centers that refugees can access, and targeting especially, as I said, women, children, and LGBTIQ plus individuals who are subjected more than others to these exploitative acts. I'm happy to take questions later. I don't want to go on. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but I just wanted to end on a quick note and stress the fact that the Ukraine emergency is not the only crisis we're seeing. We continue to grapple with competing priorities and crises that unfold across the world, from Yemen to Myanmar to Ethiopia to Syria to Venezuela and the Democratic Republic of Congo. As Omar mentioned, I started my career with UNHCR in, perhaps I'll stop sharing at this point just to conclude. How do I stop sharing? Actually, I'll figure this out in a second. But I just wanted to say that I started my career with UNHCR in Syria, and it's really hard to believe that 11 years on, the war continues, displacement continues. Refugees that I probably met 10 years ago continue to be in Lebanon and continue to live as refugees, and so these crises must not be forgotten, and they deserve the same attention as the situation in Ukraine. Thanks. Over to you, Ahmed. I'm going to try to stop sharing in the meantime.
Thank you very much indeed, Dana. But some people were unable to see the slides, so I'm just passing through the photos for people have an idea about the scale of the crisis and what UNHCR is doing to provide assistance and shelter and meet other humanitarian needs of those people fleeing Ukraine and both also the IDPs inside of Ukraine. But thank you very much indeed for providing this overview, and I'm sure People is very mindful of the great work despite the many challenges in terms of funding and other resources, and also, of course, the violence inside of the country and all the burden in the neighboring countries that are being affected by this influx of persons coming from Ukraine. So thank you very much to you, and of course to those people, including volunteers working with UNHCR at this moment. Thank you very much indeed. And now it is the turn to go to hear the stories firsthand from UNEI members in neighboring countries, also in the UK. And we are glad to see that we have over 200 people joining us live from around the world. So this exemplifies the interest people have in not only knowing firsthand the stories from university, but also to see the human face of this unfolding crisis. And it is now my privilege to present to you the first speakers from the university side. We have Dr. Estes Lukács. She is the Vice Rector for International Affairs at the Széchenyi István University in Hungary, and she's also the chair of the International Committee of Hungarian Rectors Conference. Doctor, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omar. Can you see my presentation, please? Can
Yes.
you see my presentation, please? Thank you very much. So I'm highly honored to be invited to speak at this prestigious UNEI briefing on the impact of Hungarian higher education institutes on the crisis in Ukraine. And in fact, Széchenyi István University is a founding member of the UNEI. And I'm here to speak both in my capacity as the Hungarian Rectors Conference Vice President, as well as the Vice Rector for the International Affairs at Széchenyi István University, Győr, Hungary. To alleviate the effects of the crisis in Ukraine, all HEIs in Hungary are cooperating with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as the Ministry of Innovation and Technology, who are tasked with the coordinating of the humanitarian efforts. Cooperation. Can you see my next slide, please? The second slide. Am I at my second slide?
No, we're still, at least on my end, I only see the first one.
Can you help me, please? Can you help me?
Sure.
Now I have managed as far as I understand.
Yeah. Now I see the second.
Okay,
yes.
It should be okay. Thank you very much. So cooperation with the ministry centered around the coordination of the distribution of dormitory places offered by all Hungarian HEIs. Hungary offered assistance to both international students enrolled at Ukrainian higher education institutes, as well as to Ukrainian students fleeing the situation. Assistance to the refugees came in two phases. The first step being the provision of emergency help. Students were transported from the Ukrainian border to Hungarian universities by buses or coaches, where dormitory accommodation was made immediately available. Although some students had been pre-warned of the situation, many had exited Ukraine abruptly, leaving behind all their personal belongings and surviving for at least a week with little nourishment and sleeping in sports halls. Thus, realizing this difference, all the international students on their arrival at Széchenyi István University were provided freshly prepared meals, and later on they were also provided with hot meals 3 times a day. We also distributed clothes and toiletries donated to our website charity collections organized for the refugee. We at Széchenyi István University hosted groups of students from India and Nigeria. However, nationalities of students arriving in Hungary also included Ghanaian, Egyptian, Iranian, and Pakistani students. 63% of the students arriving as refugees from Ukraine opted to return to their countries of origin, with the remaining percentage choosing to either stay in Hungary or migrate further to other European countries. As it required 3 to 5 days for evacuation flights to be organized by embassies of the relevant countries in Hungary, the temporary accommodation was of great help. By the way of long-term assistance, international and Ukrainian students fleeing from Ukraine have been offered the opportunity to continue at Hungarian HEIs. Thus, the Student at Risk program has been established for students wishing to complete a degree course. For those opting to continue their studies on a short-term basis, there is the European Erasmus program. In this regard, the government has offered a quota of 500 scholarship places for the Ukrainian students and also 500 for the international students fleeing from Ukraine. These two programs are coordinated by the Tempus Public Foundation, a non-profit organization established in 1996 by the Hungarian government, tasked with the managing of international cooperation programs and special education projects. A full of 79% of the refugee students opting to continue their studies in Hungary were pursuing medical studies in Ukraine, with the remainder from dental, pharmaceutical, engineering, business and IT programs, which they are looking to continue now. As our university mainly offers STEM courses, we can admit students on 5 bachelor's and 9 master programs in economics, business, agriculture, as well as engineering. For your information, there are 39,000 international students currently at the higher education institutes in Hungary, which together with the arrivals from Ukraine will rise to 40,000. The overall number of students in Hungarian higher education is currently 273,000, with an additional 99,000 Hungarian applicants to be expected to join from the academic year of 2022 and 23. This means that the quota offered to refugee students previously enrolled in Ukrainian HEIs represents 1% of the new applicants entering the Hungarian higher education system. Thank you very much for your kind attention and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and congratulations indeed to your university for the initiative to help those fleeing Ukraine, not only Ukrainian students, but also international foreign students that were in Ukraine prior to the ongoing situations. Thank you very much. Now it is my privilege to present to you our next speaker. She's Luciana Ghica, the director of the Center for International Cooperation and Development Studies at the University of Bucharest in Romania. She has research interests in a number of topics, including policies and theories of international solidarity and external action of the European Union. Luciana, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting us and for giving a space also for the University of Bucharest. Our response was a little bit different, and in Romania it was not a top-down approach, it was a bottom-up approach and polycentric with many initiatives from all over the place. And most universities in Romania offers a relatively similar support, with the University of Bucharest developing some additional tools of which I'm going to discuss briefly. Now, the way in which the academic community got involved is very similar to how the rest of the Romanian community got involved, the rest of the solidarity efforts. And the first thing was to, of course, to offer individual direct support to people whom we already knew. And at the same time, during the first couple of days, there was a huge level of support for everybody in need. This was happening everywhere in Romania, in the rural areas, in the urban areas, not just in urban educated environments, but the universities helped also a lot. And at the University of Bucharest, like in other big cities, there were a lot of volunteers, both students and professors, but also administrative staff, who went particularly to the transportation hubs or to the customs, often with their private cars or through their private networks, just to help. And then the next stage was the organization of individual support, because everybody wanted to help, but sometimes there were overlapping initiatives, sometimes there were overlapping issues, sometimes we didn't know what to do, so there was the organization of the individual support in 24, 48 hours. And then, of course, there were networks of networks that were created, and finally the information started to be organized. Most universities, especially the public university in Romania, followed more or less the same stages. In addition, the University of Bucharest had this issue related to the organization of information, and not only for students or for refugees coming from Ukraine at the University of Bucharest, but for the benefit of everyone else, also for those who would like to help, irrespective of universities. And this is briefly what I'm going to present. So the process was, as I told you, bottom up, and it was made through networks and polycentric. There was no just one center of information or one center of decision making or of bubbling initiative, just creating initiatives. We had just bubbles of many initiatives. Now that was very good at the beginning, because it answered immediate, direct needs where we could find them, but in time, in just a couple of days, it was obvious that there was a lot of effort that was wasted, and also there was a lot of needs that were not covered. So there was an advantage at the beginning, but as the time went by, that type of approach sometimes was costly for the overall effort. At the same time, it has been a multi-stakeholders process where I told you it was not only students, it was also teaching staff and administrative staff, which was amazing, because usually this is not a stakeholder that is visible in the public space, who came to support, and the usual hierarchies didn't matter so much. They were there just to support more and to make things more fluid. Also, the families, friends, and other connections of all these people helped a lot. So it was, again, networks of networks. And then the institutional units and the institutional chains of decision-making started to be involved more. The types of emergency direct actions within the university were of several types. Most importantly, we focused on donations, on fundraising and accommodation. There was no public funding for such things at the beginning. In Romania, the research and development and the education sector is significantly underfunded. For instance, about 6% of the GDP should go into research and innovation and education, and we have less than 0.05%. So just to understand the scale. So we really needed resources. It was not enough. We really didn't have enough resources as individuals. So we had organized in universities collection centers. And also we started then to organize the collected items, hygiene products, food, what type of food, water, and so on and so forth, and fundraising to get the funds for supporting refugees. At the University of Bucharest, there is a foundation of the university through which most of the funds, including from bigger donors, not just individual donations. So we targeted also companies who could help. So we had this type of funds that helped us when we had a larger influx of refugees coming in Bucharest, which is the capital in the south. So it takes quite some time from the north, from the border with Ukraine, to support with at least 2 warm meals per day for all the refugees hosted at the University of Bucharest. And of course, the third major thing was to offer shelter. And in the first 3 days since the war started, there were we identified at the university over 300 places in the dormitories. In a way, it was lucky that we had the pandemic, because the students were no longer, not all of them were in the dormitories, because due to a pandemic, even if some of the restrictions were no longer in place, we continued some courses online. So we had some more available places. Until now, more than 1,000 refugees, mostly foreign students initially, and later students of Ukrainian citizenships, but also non-students, especially women with young children, were hosted by the university. Other direct actions that happened at the university were related to the orientation of those who just came to Bucharest and had absolutely no idea what is going on. They usually left the country without documents or without any type of material good, and there was also the orientation in terms of language support, everyday life in Romania, and apart from the material support from the donations. We also try to create some spaces of what we call normality, especially for children. There were small parties for children. Just now, we at the University of Bucharest, we discussed with the circus in Bucharest for activities with young children, and there were also specific needs that were identified for vulnerable categories, and these were treated mostly through networks of students, of professors, of teaching staff that was already involved in other civic society initiatives. For instance, for LGBT students or professors, or for disabled refugees, not only from academia. In addition to the direct support, the universities, and including the University of Bucharest, provided support for larger national projects, for especially language support for Ukrainian, but not only Ukrainian, translations of basic information for the Romanian authorities. And that was a large project created by a network of IT geeks and enthusiasts, Code for Romania, for the United Nations Refugee Agency and the Romanian government and the International Organization for Migration and the Romanian Council for National Council for Refugees. And that became the largest platform for information in Romania. So that was a major input. But also, as academics, we could provide information. We could design, systematize, and verify the way the information for refugee was presented, especially for emergency purposes. So where to go, what to do, but also for the Romanian public. If we want to help, where to go, what to do, who is doing what, this type of expertise. And of course, we also contributed as a university to fundraising campaign, not only ours, but we contributed, for instance, to a charity concert that managed to gather more than $1 million in 24 hours. Eventually, we also tried to systematize all this information, because, as I told you, the biggest problem that we identified from the very beginning was the waste of resources. And we created at the University of Bucharest this initiative called Uni for Ukraine, where right now we have information in 8 languages, and where we put all the information on the major initiatives in Romania for all refugees, but also for those who want to offer support, to know whom to trust, We also we had the colleague from the first presentation who focused on the issue of trafficking. We were the first in the Romanian academia to include information about potential trafficking of persons and to put a brief information on how to identify and report potential abuse against refugees. And we focused on the needs of academic refugees by providing information on how to continue the studies, not only at the University of Bucharest, but we translated the legislation that was adopted by the Romanian government into the everyday language so that everybody can understand, and then we translated this in the 8 languages. So currently the Romanian government decided that all students from Ukrainian universities will be given a place for continuing their studies in Romanian universities for the current and for the next academic year. It will be for free for all Ukrainian citizens, and it will be a fee paying for the non-Ukrainian citizens, but even the fees are at the lowest. So it's very similar like with third country students. There is no quota in Romania, and there is also the possibility to study even if you lost your document, you don't have documents. There is a mechanism for that. So we try to translate that to make the legislation easily understandable by those who really need very specific things. And we also listed all the other international initiatives that we could find, because this is not just us, it's a network of networks, it's an information hub, and we also listed everything that we could find in terms of statements of other universities from Romania, from the region, from Europe, from all over the world, and from professional associations and from publishers that stand with Ukraine. Currently at the University of Bucharest, we're already enrolling students from Ukraine, both foreign citizens and Ukrainian citizens. If anyone needs our external relations office deals with this administratively, but to support all the communication on such things, Uni for Ukraine, the hub for information, also became a one-shop platform for contact, and it was developed initially with students and teaching staff from one single program, and it developed to a network beyond just the university, beyond the Faculty of Political Science where it was initially placed, and to the entire university, and now to a larger network in Romania and abroad. Thank you. That's briefly what we did.
Thank you very much, Luciana. And actually, in the UN Academic Impact website, we already feature an article that outlines some of the actions that you just described. Within the next few days, we will do the same with the University of Hungary that just spoke before you. And one of the first, if not the first article, actually is about the university that is going to speak next. So it's a privilege for me to present Darina Petrik. She's the coordinator of the Student Help Desk at Lazarski University in Poland. Darina, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Omar. Thanks to every speaker who has already presented. It's a huge honor to be on the same virtual stage with you. Just let me give me a second. I will share our presentation, and please let me know whether you see the slides or no in a second.
Yes, we can see the slide.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much. Good morning or afternoon, depending on the country you are in right now. First of all, I would like to say that it is a huge honor to us to participate in this briefing. On behalf of the whole community of Lazarski University here in Warsaw, I thank you for the invitation and highlighting of our deeds, which we do every day. I'll start with a short introduction of our institution. Lazarski University is one of the top-ranked Polish private universities located in Warsaw with multinational, constantly growing and developing community. In short, we strive for development and we are not afraid of challenges, especially during these difficult times. My presentation about our response to the horrible war which is going on in Ukraine right now will cover all the activities aimed to help, which were made by our universities in 56 days of war in more or less chronological order. Let me start with the day of February 24th, when the whole world was numb due to the fact that Russian Federation armed forces started the full-scale invasion of Ukrainian territories. On this day, being in total shock, all the departments of our university immediately started to think on the real steps of how we can help. The very first step was to convince our students that them and their families are safe and they can rely on us. We created a landing page on the official website where all the necessary information was placed about the psychological, psychiatric, if needed, informational and financial help. Those who need help and those who can provide it, they have it all in one place. Also, we have started fundraising. All the money we gather on the account of the University Foundation will be spent on helping our students in need. On the next day, the meeting of the heads of the departments was held together with the representatives of Ukrainian community in order to start working on a long-term strategy in order to help those in need. Right now, we are working on special scholarships, social ones for our students who found themselves in difficult situations. Now I would like to switch to the pillar of Lazarski University Humanitarian Aid Activities, our help point. Lazarski University officially announced the start of the collection of necessities in order to help the Ukrainian nations, those who are there in Ukraine right now and those who are here in Poland. It all started on February 28th and believe me, did not stop even for a day. We managed to gather more than 200 students who were ready to help in every possible and impossible sometimes, as it seems, actions. We had people coming and bringing stuff from all around the district first, then all around the city, and eventually from other countries. We have created a special system on how to pack humanitarian help in a correct way so it crosses Polish-Ukrainian border with no issues. So each and every box is marked with the serial number and the list of goods inside. Later, we mark the weight of such a box and it is registered into online spreadsheet where it is listed in the corresponding category. In such a way, we have the whole warehouse here organized in a convenient way. For example, when we do have a vehicle go into one of the Ukrainian cities or villages which need help, we can easily identify what will be loaded to the car, obviously, depending on the place where it will be delivered to and what is listed in the official request from the Ukrainian authorities. And also, we can easily fill the official declaration. Also, we do prepare so-called special requests for people who came here from Ukraine. That means that person can come and ask for help here on site. And we will try to do everything what we can in order to help. In addition, we have launched the chat bot and placed it on the main channels of our social media accounts and our website. While using it, people can receive all the necessary information either automatically or reach one of our volunteers from the team in case they need more details. I need to mention that with time, the way our help point operates became way more organized. Now we have a team of only 8 volunteers who are working every day, but trust me, the efficiency of the point did not decrease even for a bit. Also, I proudly can say that Lazarski University Help Point is one of the most efficient ones in the city, and I'm basing it on the fact that volunteers at the railway stations, while meeting the refugees, they are redirecting them directly to us. Also, the fact that we have vehicles coming from Malta, France, Germany, and Sweden bringing humanitarian help shows the scale of the activity. When it comes to the cities where we have sent our help boxes, these are Kiev, Lviv, Sumy, and small villages in the areas. Last week, we also sent help to Bucha, and I'm sure all of you know how important it was to safely deliver the boxes there. Here, I would like to express my gratitude to each and every person who have made even a small impact on what we are doing here. If it's not to you, this would not be possible. Moving further, our Foreign Language Center launched a special Polish language course for Ukrainian refugees so they can settle down a little bit easier. Important thing here to mention is the fact that there was children care organized by the team of volunteers, so moms can calmly deepen into learning process while their children spend some quality time with our wonderful volunteers. Recently, we have organized a charity concert. This was a main part of our traditional Easter celebration. However, this year we've slightly changed it with the noble purpose. Employees and students of Lazarski University joined their efforts in order to create something warm and bright that can inspire people. As a result, we gathered 4,390 Polish zlotys from ticket sales, which is around $1,000. During the concert, the audience had a chance to witness the premiere of the reportage made by Lazarski Studio. The material covers most of the activities which I'm presenting to you right now today. By the way, you also have a chance to watch it if you want. You can scan the QR code which you see on the screens right now, and I highly recommend you do it. We will appreciate it a lot. I'll wait for a second. Okay. Also, I would like to mention one of the help acts organized by Lazarski Shop, which was founded by one of the brightest alumni, Aksen Samak. The team organized a 2-day sale of the whole collection of the university merch they had in stock. 28,000 Polish zlotys, which is around $6,500, were raised and immediately sent to the organizations that buy first aid kits and body armor for the brave people of Ukraine. Later, a special limited collection of Ukrainian hoodies was created and again sold immediately. Again, the whole profit was sent to the foundations that help Ukrainians, but this time it was around 7,000 Polish zlotys. So I'm reaching the end of the presentation for today. What we do here is a very powerful act of help that consists of hundreds personal stories, and it truly amazes me. I'm proud to say that the whole academic community passed the exam for humanity not only here in Poland, but as we can see in a lot of different countries. And being Ukrainian myself, I'm proud of everything what Lazarski University does every day, and I know that these people, they will not stop until we know that we have won. Having the opportunity to speak in front of the audience of the United Nations Academic Impact, during this briefing, I'm saying thank you, дякую. You are making a history right now. I want to highlight that I would never fit everything that is done into a 5-minute presentation. However, now you have a general idea of what we do here at Lazarski. In case you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. You have the contact information mentioned here on the last slide, and I would like to thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Darina. Very inspiring remarks, and congratulations again to the university for all the wide range of actions that you're doing as we speak to support those fleeing Ukraine. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we have with us a couple of representatives from the UNAI SDG Hub for Goal 16. They are from the Montfort University in the United Kingdom. We have with us Pooja Subramanian, Equality and Diversity Executive at the Montfort Students' Union. And we also have with us Philippe Manning, Students' Opportunities Coordinator, Volunteering and Recognition, also at the Montfort Students' Union. Pooja was born and brought up in South India, moved to the UK to pursue her bachelor's degree in international business. And Philip is a recent graduate from the University of Nottingham in education with also a background in healthcare. So Philip and Pooja, thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'll just share our screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah, hopefully everyone can see. Hello everyone, I'm Pooja, Equality and Diversity Executive at the Montfort Students' Union.
And I'm Philippa. I'm a Student Opportunities Coordinator with a lead area in volunteering and recognition at the Montfort Students' Union as well.
I'm going to walk you through how our initial responses were towards the crisis in Ukraine. As a students' union who are quite reactive by nature, the officer team of 5 student-elected representatives responded to the crisis in Ukraine around the first week of March. We decided to mobilize students by encouraging them to reach out to us if they are directly or indirectly affected by the crisis in Ukraine. We also reached out to the Vice-Chancellor of De Montfort University to learn about their measures that they were taking from the university side to mobilize students and staff within the DMU community, and we learned that they were preparing to make a similar statement like ours as the first step. But soon after, the Montfort Students' Union and the executive officer team started receiving responses from our students who were asking us to do something on humanitarian aspects, like raising donations for sending out to the refugees from Ukraine, which Philippa will talk more about it shortly. So firstly, we wanted to express our solidarity with all those who were affected by the war in Ukraine. So the executive officer team organized a vigil around the 7th of March at the Montfort Students' Union on our campus. Several students participated in the vigil, including Russian students and Ukrainian students, who stood in silence for about a couple of minutes by lighting up candles. The executives had a chance to talk to students and encourage their university mates to reach out to the advice and well-being team at the Montfort University for any kind of support. So the Montfort Students' Union organized exclusive drop-in sessions, which was open to all students, no matter their nationality, but particularly emphasizing on Ukrainian and Russian students. It was a space to chat about how students are feeling and how they can recognize other people who are feeling the same way as well. It wasn't a space for counseling, as the advice and well-being team were not trained for that, but they definitely directed students to confidential counseling sessions if needed outside of the union. Most of the discussions were based around wanting to support, people affected in Ukraine, but not knowing how else we could support other than offering donations. But we had several individuals coming from Poland, Russia, and Ukraine who were planning to return home to see their families, but they were more worried about what the war could mean for other surrounding countries as well. But we also signposted our students to De Montfort University's well-being team and the international student support team if they needed any further help at all.
So, as well as the vigil and the wellbeing support, we also did a collection for necessities. So I'd started researching charities and organisations within Leicestershire to see who was sending donations over to Ukraine or the neighbouring countries. This is when DMU Local reached out to me. So DMU Local are a department within the university who are responsible for community impact and engagement programs. So they wanted to do a similar thing, as they'd had students reach out to them, as well as our exec officers, to see what response we were going to do as a community at DMU. So we decided to join forces, and we found a distribution hub that is near the university called E Street. It was actually founded by DMU students and alumni, and we also found the Polish Social Club, which advised us on what necessities were needed for the Ukrainian refugees. So we created this space, and you can see in the bottom corner we had loads of donations. There was an overwhelming response, and we actually had to close the donation station early because we had just run out of room. The distribution hub had also received an overwhelming response as well. So at this point, we decided to sort the donations. This was normally done at the distribution hub, but because they had an overwhelming response, they were struggling to sort through them all quickly. So we decided to do it at the university in the student union, and we booked a space and asked for volunteers. We anticipated it would take from like 9 a.m. till about 6 p.m. But actually we finished just after lunchtime at about 2. So thanks to our really enthusiastic volunteers of students and staff, we sorted through them really quickly. We put them in boxes and bags and wrote in English what was in the box or the bag. And then we actually had a Ukrainian student who came and wrote translations of all of the English labels into Ukrainian as well, so that when they got to their destination, they would hopefully be easier to organise there as well. After we'd sorted through our donations, we then transported all of the donations in a lorry to the Polish Social Club at Loughborough. The Polish Social Club then transported all the donations from Loughborough, which is in the middle of the UK, all the way to Poland, and gave them to the two charities at the bottom of the screen, and then they were given to the Ukrainian refugees that are crossing the border over into Poland, so that they have some supplies when they arrive safely, hopefully. So after that, we've been looking at how we can support students and the crisis going forward. So we've been looking at doing another donation collection, as we'd have a lot of students still wanting to donate, and we were having to refer them to other drop-off points. We're continuing our wellbeing support through our advice team and the university's own support teams and counselling. And as part of my role, I also look after student-led societies, so they're groups that students run themselves, and a lot of them want to do fundraising for charities for Ukraine as well.
Thank you, Philippa. So as much as we are genuinely hoping that peaceful resolutions are achieved in Ukraine sooner, De Montfort University and De Montfort Students' Union will continue to support our community going forward. So if you'd like to learn more about what we're looking to do, or if you'd like to join hands with us, please do not hesitate to contact us via email, Instagram, or Twitter. But thank you so much for the opportunity and for your time today.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting hearing about all the different universities and what their responses are. There's been a whole mixture, but it's been really good to hear everybody's. So thank you for letting us join today.
Thank you, Philippa. Thank you, Pooja, and our warm appreciation to the students, alumni, staff, and academics from the Montfort University, our very own SDG Hub for Goal 16, and which is precisely very well connected to what you're doing. So our warm appreciation again to you both and to the rest of the student body at the university. I would like to present the excuses from one of our speakers, Dana Sleiman from the UNSCR. She had to move to another call, to another engagement, but she shared with us the presentation, and we will be sharing hers and the presentation shared by the other speakers in an email as a follow-up to this briefing. We are running out of time. However, I would like to not only acknowledge all the wonderful presentations that we have heard today and how inspiring they have been, but also some of them are already featured on our website, and some will be within the next few weeks. And with that, I would like to ask at least one question to each one of the speakers, and bear with me with that. If you can answer in less than 1 minute, that would be really appreciated. To the first speaker, Doctor from the university in Hungary, you mentioned cooperation with the government and you know the larger network of universities in Hungary. So I was wondering that cooperation in practice has been challenging. What are the lessons learned out of the experience that you have had so far in these few weeks of the war in Ukraine?
Actually, it was for the allotment of international students to the dormitories of Hungarian higher education institutions, and it happened in a very smooth fashion. So this was the first stage of the hub, the emergency part of the hub, and it lasted about 2 weeks. And actually, it happened within 2 or 3 days. We contacted the ministries, and the ministries were basically allocating the buses, the coaches that were running to the Ukrainian-Hungarian border, and they were reaching out to specific universities with the requests on dormitory places. And we offered as many as we could every single day. So actually it was smooth and swift, and it was a wonderful coordination.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that's a best practice to be shared and emulated in different scenarios. Now I would like to ask the representative from the University of Bucharest in Romania about this page that you created, and I was amazed to see this available in all those languages. So we were wondering how you come up with that idea and how you actually got the information translated in all those languages.
Well, it was initially an exercise for our students. We have a professional master program, international public affairs, which is exactly about that, about the public interest from a cosmopolitan perspective. So from, if you want, the UN values are here. And in the first 2 days, many of us, since this war began, many of us were involved in direct support. And we saw immediately on the ground that there was a need for systematizing information and making things available. So I proposed to my students in the class that was exactly on risk management and public communication in the international environment to start this as an exercise and see where it goes. And we, in a couple of days, we had it already in 3 languages, English, Romanian, and German. German because it was the native language of one of our students. And then we refined it, and in less than a week we went online with most of these, with the academic solidarity, with identify and report abuse, and with I need help, I want to offer support. And once the Romanian government started to develop the legal framework for continuing the studies for students, we also added this, I want to continue my studies. This is an ongoing platform. We keep updating, we're monitoring, and we're checking the sources all the time. Also for international resources, we collected here all the time from everybody who wanted to tell us more. So if you also have ideas about what we could include, we could put them here. We try to organize the information, but we also try to put everything that others did as well. We're not the only one, but it was important to put all the resources in one place and organize it easily. And as you can see, the team is actually originally mostly students and myself, but then for the translations, it was mostly from our faculty in political science. We used students or their friends, and for Ukrainian, it was mostly refugees who helped, but many didn't want to give their names. We also had support from other colleagues who helped, and then there were colleagues from other universities who came with resources. Many of them didn't want to be mentioned. It's very nice that we also managed to reach not only students but also high school students who help with this. The logo is designed by an art student from a high school. And all this was just volunteering with students, and we try to check with colleagues who already have experience with languages. So sometimes there were some things that should be refined, but most of the information was translated with our students' support.
Thank you very much. To Darina from Hungarian University, you mentioned relationships that you partnered also with NGOs, civil society organizations. So I was wondering how that has evolved in such a short period of time, and what had you learned from that experience of liaising with these organizations?
Well, it was very chaotic in the very beginning, of course, it's understandable. Actually, when it all started, a lot of personal contacts played huge role, because when you have someone who you can talk to directly without sending a lot of emails, you just need to call or text and do right away, because you do not have time to think or create a strategy. That was a chaotic moves, and that was mainly based in the very beginning on some personal contacts, but later, of course, with the huge help from the university and support, financial one, which is very important at the moment. But right now it's way organized, and right now we actually do have more time to officially receive the request, for example, from Ukrainian authorities with the full list of goods they need in this or that place. And right now it works way more efficient, and right now we know how it actually should work, so we are ready for everything. Right now I can say it was pride in here.
Thank you, Darina, and last but not least, to both Philippa and Pooja. I want basically to know what are the next steps moving forward. What are you planning to do? Because unfortunately, the situation has not been resolved, and the war continues as we speak. So I was wondering, what are the plans that you have for the next few weeks?
Just like how we just mentioned in our presentation, we have a lot of students and immigrants from Ukraine and other surrounding countries in Leicester, where we are based at. We still have a lot of appetite for students to wanting to come and help out the people. So we're looking to collect some more donations in the future as well, unless, Philippa, you want to add anything else?
Yes, so there's the donation collections. We had to unfortunately turn people away because we just didn't have enough space for them. And we did refer them to other donation collection points around the city that were easy for them to get to. So I think if we were to open another collection, it would be very overwhelming like it was before. Also, we have student groups. They lead their own activities. We've had some of them who want to raise money in their own way and do their own contributions as well. And then I suppose because we're further away, we've had things like dormitories, like other universities have. We've not really thought about that sort of thing, just because it's taken longer for refugees to come into this country. So yeah, I think donations and collections and that sort of thing are the main areas.
Thank you both, Philip and Pooja. Now, apologies because we ran over a little bit, some minutes. Just as a reminder, we will send the link to the YouTube video with the recording of this briefing, if not today, tomorrow, along with the presentations from all the speakers. And now I would like, for closing remarks, give the floor to Rob.
Thank you, Omar, and thank you so much to all of the presenters. Those are really such moving and compelling presentations. And you know, it's not just about the humanitarian assistance. It's about the great example of humanity, of demonstrating how we can really come together and be supportive of others. And just great examples of the academic community stepping in and taking on the challenges. And you know, as Omar's questions were really interesting there, talking about working with the governments, working with the NGOs, working with our communities. It's just such a great example of how important universities and the academic communities are to the countries in which they operate in, within the communities in which they operate in, and how those partnerships and engagements can really pay off and pay dividends as we head into crises like this. So just huge congratulations to all of you, all the work you're doing. It's so important, it's so necessary. And at UN Academic Impact, what we're really trying to do, for those of you who have been joining us through our sessions the last several months, is really create a network of institutions who can work together, share best practices, understand, you know, how we can be supportive of each other and be supportive, you know, whether it's around a crisis like this or the Sustainable Development Goals or to combat the climate crisis. All those things, the community has so much to offer and so much to do. And what we would welcome is any thoughts you have going forward for conversations like this. You know, this is a little different than the ones we've been doing on the Sustainable Development Goals recently, because we really felt we wanted to demonstrate and show just how important the academic community can be and the UNAI network can be when we have these crises to face. So thank you all again for your presentations. Thank you all again for what you're doing, and we can't wait to hear more from you, and also how we can all help, how this network at UNAI can support the work that you're doing, because I'm sure that there are a lot of thoughts and ideas that we unfortunately didn't get a chance to get to from the participants who joined us today, and the audience that was participating. And so for those of you who maybe had questions, didn't get a chance to answer them, wanted to offer some words or thoughts, you know, please send them to us and we will try and get them disseminated and distributed to the network. So thank you very much again, and keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you so much.